parent friends. Hey girls! So excited we could get together. Jerry, tuck in your shirt. It's been way too long. I've been needing a break from the kids. Your kids are right over. Maybe they need a hug. Or just ask them if they want to go to timeout. No. I don't think there's ever been a kid that has said yes to that question. I'm counting to 3. 1, 2, 3. I don't even give the warning. They just look at me and they know.
But Mommy, she can't see trees.
Now what are you gonna do? Do you want a gummy? Or is your body naturally telling you that you're ready to go?
I want candy.
Is Jaden gonna take me seriously once he's seen all this behavior? Oh, come on, bro. If you don't give me that, we're gonna have to leave or something.
I'm not going to leave, right?
I mean, this was so fun. You're serious. Next time, let's bring the kids. Hey, Karen. No. I have more gummies if you guys want some. This isn't happening again. Maybe it's just a different parenting style. What are the types of parenting styles?
There's kind of two pieces to this. There's parenting styles that we study in the research, right? Those are clearly defined types of parenting. And then there's parenting philosophies and styles we see in the real world. So I'll just briefly talk about the research-based parenting styles. We can categorize parenting based on kind of 2 dimensions, and those are warmth and then level of control. And so if you have let's say high warmth and high control or high expectations, that's what we refer to in the research as authoritative parenting. And that's the type of parenting that has been shown to have the best outcomes. And that's, again, high warmth, high expectations for behavior. Then if you have low warmth and low expectations for behavior, that's what we would call neglectful parenting, right? You don't have a warm, engaged relationship, but you also don't have any expectations. And that would be considered kind of this neglectful type of parenting approach. And often that's not so much an approach as due to circumstances, as you can probably imagine. And then if you have high warmth, but low boundaries and low control, that's where we would say you have permissive parenting. So you have a very warm, loving relationship, but you might struggle more on how do I set boundaries or not wanting to set boundaries. And then the last parenting style in the research is authoritarian. And that's kind of maybe that older schools style of parenting where you have high expectations for behavior, kind of that do as I say type of parenting with low emotional responsiveness and low warmth.
There's such a difference in how this is discussed in research and then how it's discussed, in everyday parenting and especially in social media, right? There's what we see more in social media or in the everyday parenting discussions are kind of this pendulum swinging type of phenomenon, right? So, our parents or grandparents were more, might have been harsher on the, children are to be seen and not heard. And so like Jenna described, that might fall more into authoritarian, I always mess it up, parenting. And I think research has become more widely accepted that's, that there are negative outcomes associated with that. Physical discipline, lots of yelling, that kind of stuff, shaming. And then, now I would say the trend that we're seeing more, in clinic from families coming in and particularly in social media is the pendulum swinging more towards, relationships are really important. Warmth is really important, which is all true, with lots of maybe anxiety or ping-ponging back and forth about how to do the boundaries piece. There's been less emphasis, or we're not doing as good of a job in kind of spreading or disseminating the information about, there's also some negative outcomes for going too far that way. Permissive parenting also has challenges associated with it. So we need to find that balance between warmth and boundaries. There's a lot of parenting programs that have a lot of research behind them about how to achieve that. We kind of like to think of those evidence-based programs that are all based on the same core tenets as being like your compass in parenting. Right? Like all of us are going on this very long journey up this parenting mountain, and there's lots of twists and turns. And if you kind of know the basic tenets that are backed by 40 years of research and keep evolving over time, but coming back to the same tenets, then you're heading due north, like you have your compass. And all this information on social media and the different parenting I don't know, philosophies, I guess, is a better word than parenting styles as it's defined in the research, but the parenting philosophies, which are not anything that's actually been studied, right? None of these programs like attachment parenting or free range parenting, all these different types of parenting, they all have awesome aspects to it, but they haven't been studied. So those are more like paths up a mountain, right? And they can be great paths up the mountain so long as, you head due north and you have your compass on your way.
And I think what's really challenging, and you guys highlighted that, is that when you're heading up that mountain or you're going due north, you don't know which one to choose. And so you're going to try it. And then you might see somebody else's parenting style and be like, well, hold on, I don't like that. So I'm going to do something a little bit different than that. And then it's hard, speaking personally too. Like when my 3-year-old, when I have play dates with people, sometimes what I see, I'm nervous that it's going to rub off on, the way that another parent disciplines their child in the moment, or lack of discipline or speaks to their child might impact my child's feelings or understanding of what discipline is. And so if you disagree with a parenting style, what should you do?
Yeah, that's so tricky. I mean, I think
question.
yeah. Like many things in parenting, there's probably not one specific thing to do. But it's kind of looking back again, like, are we talking about a parent who is generally going in the same direction up this mountain, right? The warmth and the boundaries, but they're doing it slightly different than us, right? So they're still setting boundaries and they have lots of warmth, but maybe they choose to do it slightly different than us. In those situations, I think, yes, we just continue to parent as we think is best for our family, modeling maybe, modeling such a powerful form of learning that we talk about with our kids, but it can also be powerful in our other relationships. So parenting the way that works for us, when we're out with our friends, and still being able to maintain those friendships, right? But then we have those times when we're going up the mountain and they're some of our people we care a lot about might not be, right? They're struggling either to set boundaries, and there's effects on us because we're spending time with them, or there's low warmth, or whatever the combination is. And that's where it's trickier. And I don't think that there's a clear answer for every situation. I think it's examining, like, how does this play into my life? Where is this relationship, and how does it fall within my values as a person and as a family? And am I able to maintain this relationship with this friend while also still being true to my values? And sometimes that answer might be yes, right? For example, I have some friends where our parenting approaches are very different. And I've learned that what that means is that I have to be thoughtful about the types of interactions we're doing with that family, right? Going to a park is a lot easier for us than doing something at home where behavior is more challenging in a more structured environment. If we go to the park, it's great. The kids can run around, they're more active. There's less need for us to impose our boundary setting. When we're in each other's homes, it becomes a lot more challenging. We snack differently, we eat differently, we respond to behaviors differently. And I've noticed that that's a more difficult setting. So for that friendship, because it's important enough, I have just been more thoughtful about the types of activities. But there might be times when they're just so discrepant that we have to say this isn't in line with my values, and maybe I have to spend time with this friend one-on-one instead of in a parenting setting. And so again, it comes back down to your values and how you do that.
I guess being humble and curious, right? So if someone's on a different path, like, you have a friend that's co-sleeping and you're sleep training, right? That doesn't mean that either one of your kids is going to have bad outcomes or is a better parent than the other. And this is what a lot of what we're seeing, right, is this parent shaming that I think people are even thinking is a science-based opinion because it's being put out there as such, right? Like science shows if you give timeout, it will damage your attachment. No studies on that. Science shows if you co-sleep, you'll have a codependent child. No studies on that. Okay, so then we reject each other because we're saying like, no, this is the way science says, like, get on my path or you're out. And it's very judgmental. But if we come back to, how Jenna was defining in the research, what really matters for outcomes is, okay, is a parent having warmth and boundaries? If you have a parent that is screaming at their kid, physically disciplining their kid, shaming their kid, they're not heading due north with you, right? It's not that they're on a different path going north of the mountain. they're not going the same direction as you at all. If you have a kiddo where the kid is, punching the parents or cursing at their parents, and the parents are not responding with boundaries, also not heading due north. Doesn't mean they're a bad parent. It just means you guys aren't, they don't have the tools, the same toolkit that you're using.
Is there a certain age that you feel kids pick up certain behaviors from other people they're around more so than others?
It kind of comes back to like, how discrepant is this parent's or this family's approach to yours, right? Slight differences, that's a great opportunity for learning, because that's, our kids do have to learn how to behave and act and respond in different environments. Different families are going to have different rules. Maybe in your friend's family, you have to take your shoes off, where that's not a rule in our family. And those are small little lessons that kids can learn. Again, if we're going up different mountains, that's going to be much more difficult. And one of the skills that we teach in our course is this idea of positive rehearsal and practicing with young kids, or any age kids really. And that can start really young, as 2 or 3, practicing before you go to a park with a family that might have different behaviors or expectations, that you can talk about what your expectations for behavior are going to be and how you're going to handle it if it doesn't go well. So, we're going to go to the park and this is what we're going to do. We're going to stay there for this long. Sometimes this is challenging. And if this happens, then you're going to come take a break with me for a couple minutes and then you can try again. Sammy's mommy and daddy might handle it differently, and that's okay. Different families have different rules, and it can be as simple as that for young kids.
We're not here to constantly judge everyone's path, right? So how do we teach our kids both of those lessons, to advocate, to recognize safe situations, and also to be flexible enough to appreciate essentially what is other people's cultures, right? The culture of their family. And so I think what's important that your kids are observing is, look, we follow the same rules. When a kid hits or when a kid screams, they take a break. In terms of the path, I would be wary of what the intent is behind the question conversation. Is it to purport that your path is somehow more backed by evidence, or is it genuinely to have curiosity about the person's path?
The first step is to kind of challenge our own beliefs. Like, where is this coming from? I chose this, they're choosing something else. Am I feeling defensive because their path is different than mine? Or do I have a genuine concern around how they're parenting?
We're big fans of providing frameworks over scripts, right? So like the framework of, every family has to be safe. Every kid deserves to be safe. And here's what that means, right? And in kid language, summarizing what we said, right? Like, every kid should feel like their mommy and daddy loves them, right? They might show love in a different way, right? Some families hug more than others. Not all families hug as much as we do. That's cool. And every family has rules that kids have to follow to stay safe. And if they don't, their parents are going to help them follow those rules better by maybe having a consequence or maybe having them go somewhere to calm down. If you ever feel unsafe, you should tell me if you don't feel safe at somebody's house during a play date or something like that, right? Because that's a have to. That's totally have to. But it's kind of like, I don't know, different flavors of ice cream in kid language, right? It's like most families like ice cream, but there might be different flavors at different people's houses, right? So their flavor might be that they talk to their kid for a long time every time they get in trouble. So you might have to wait and be patient, really use your patience muscles, right? And other families, you might have to wait by yourself while he's sent to his room to take a break by himself. And he might be upset, but he's okay. And if you have a question, you can talk to me, right? Like, that's the general arch of the conversation. And if you guys are all together and something comes up, you're seeing your kid's friend go up and whine every time they want something. And maybe the parent's cool with that, and because that's just not a huge priority in their house. Whereas that for you is like your head almost explodes. I might be talking about myself.
Or me.
That's cool. And that's where we got to teach our kids to be a little bit more flexible, right? And when your kiddo comes up and whines to you because they're watching this other kid and they're like, Mom, cookie, you can be like, just proceed as you normally would, because that other kid is watching and also learning from you that, like, oh, wow, they've got a different flavor. That's a safe, loving parent who's got a different flavor, right? We're not all parent robots. It's okay for kids to know that. And so you can say to your kid in front of the other kid, in our family, we use regular voices. You can say, can I have one, please?
Being flexible yourself too as a parent, because sometimes
Totally.
I stick to something because I'm like, this is my safe understanding. But
Yeah.
then you kind of transfer that onto your children. So you kind of freak and freeze in that moment and they're looking to you for help. So
What are your non-negotiables too? Like, you know, if it's asking with a regular voice when you need something, for in our family, that's a non-negotiable, right? Like, but you know, one of the things I used to struggle with is like rigidity around snack and meal times. We don't snack, you know, within a certain window of meal times because I know my kids don't eat well. And so we have more structure around when my kids eat than maybe some of my friends. And when we go to their house, that's just one expectation I'm willing to let go. Your kids are having gummy worms and gummy bears an hour before dinner. Great. My kids can partake in that because it's a once in a while deal. It's not worth it. It doesn't have any long-term consequences in my mind if it's a once in a while thing. But there's other things that I'm not willing to let slide because it's more important to my values. And so I think, but it was hard for me at first, right? Because I am like division of responsibility and I need to have like this flexible framework and the research shows, and I have to sometimes allow my own anxiety. It's like exposure therapy for me because I can't control everything with my kids. And I have to be uncomfortable sometimes with safe differences in environment.
so how many non-negotiables do you recommend having? Just
Yeah, oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I think that's where like in our parenting program, that's like before we even get into the skills is identifying your values as a family. Um, and I think it's how many values do you have and does this thing align with your values?
You and your friend's family might both value respect. The methods or, you know, the battles that you pick to teach that, right, and to hold that value in your home might be different. If I had to give advice, I think our pendulum has swung over being too judgmental and too rigid, because we have to recognize the stuff that we seek out on social media. Psychologically, there's a phenomenon called confirmation bias, right? Which means we are always going to seek and be attracted to information that agrees with or confirms what we already believe, right? So if I use time in my home, or I never give snacks, or I'm going to look for stuff that says that's okay.
Oh, and the algorithm is going to feed
I
you
know, I
that
was like,
stuff
this,
as well.
your whole life is going to be filtered like
Yes, it is. And then they're going to be feeding you messages like, oh, parents that do this other path over there, their kids are going to be total, I want to curse, but they're going to be really messed up, you know? So you better not associate. And then what kind of a world are we raising our kids in where they don't see anything different from us? And the first time they run into a difference, they put it in this other category of not okay. Or the first time they visit another culture, God
And I
forbid.
think that's so important is like, you know, there are families in different cultures that, you know, we're talking about time in and all these things, and they're like, that is so far outside of where what would fit in our culture and our world. And for us to say that that's the right thing to do for every family is just so elitist and like unhelpful. I just think we have to keep that in mind. Like, who are we talking to? Are we talking to other people that look just like us and talk just like us? Or are we talking about parenting as a whole? And if there are so many different parents out there in different countries and different that speak different languages that are amazing and loving and do things different than us. And that I think that's just so important. Warmth and boundaries, like what that looks like can be very different for each family.
I'm Shauna Alvarez, and I'm a child psychologist. I've just always had a passion for kind of kids with big feelings, fast brains, intense kiddos. And I'm also a mom of three and a longtime foster and adoptive parent. So that makes me even more passionate, I think, about my work, is that I have used it a lot. My house is definitely I would say an Incredible Years house, which is the type of parenting group that we've run for years. And been practicing for many years doing evidence-based family interventions in schools and homes. And Jenna and I go way back to grad school, and throughout have worked with each other in various capacities. And then during COVID, Jenna was sending me lots of texts with images from social media and saying like, did you know that this is the information out there? And I'm looking and I'm going, no, you know, because we're in our bubble doing research and doing clinical work and doing evidence-based work, and we were kind of concerned that there's a lot of misinformation or just an overwhelm of information out there. There's also some great stuff out there, but it's hard to discern, right? And so that's what kind of gave birth to the idea. Jenna was like, let's do something about this outside of the clinic doors. You know, let's get in there. Like, you know, we need to have a seat at this table too. And so that's how Helping Families Thrive started. So we basically looked at what are the top evidence-based parenting programs, not parenting philosophies, not the paths up the mountain, right? What are the top things that have us going due north, that have 40 years of evidence behind them? And what are the essentials? And that's the name of our course, is essentials. What are the essentials? Like, what's the compass you need? Different paths, cool. What's the compass based on the overlap? Like, what's the same across all of these programs? And that's what we teach in our course, is going through what those essentials are, so that you can feel more confident as a parent at the end.